Oh no, the poor delicate flowers, the reporters, Trump was saying mean things to them. Quick, write a story about it so everyone knows how we feel. Journalists shouldn't be doing this. You go to a press briefing, you ask a question, the president says something mean, it's irrelevant, has nothing to do with the question that was asked. Instead, what journalists end up doing is writing these stories about how the president was mean to me. I don't care. And it's nothing to do with what's going on, and it's not your job to write a diary post about why you're upset the president was mean to you. We get it. But you know what happens? It's this circular thing where the media was chasing after what they called the Trump bump, repeatedly smearing and ragging on the president like clockwork because it makes them money. It gets them clicks. People just love to hate the guy. Trump deserves some responsibility for that for sure because he leans into it. But as Jon Stewart said, he goes after the ego of these people, and they have very large egos. So they take it all personally and then do exactly what Trump would expect or what works for Trump. It proves that he's right. So I'm not saying, he's making them do this. He's right. When he calls them out and he says they're bad reporters or he calls out the lies, he's right. There was one guy the other day who said something about an official being recently appointed, and Trump was like, when? And the guy goes, well, under Obama. Oh, there it is. Falsely framing what's going on for political points. They don't care about reporting the news. They care about get ya. I'm going to get ya. I'm going to write. I'm going to ask a question, and it's going to be loaded in a certain way. So the Huffington Post writes this story. Trump repeatedly attacks reporters in coronavirus briefing. And I'll point out some of this stuff because there's some really interesting stuff. Like apparently one of these journalists works for a Chinese Communist Party propaganda outlet. Trump tried calling her out, and they try and accuse Trump of being racist for doing so because it's a woman of color. Oh, you know what, man? I'm not interested. I don't care. I care that there's Chinese propaganda being invited into the White House press briefings, and we can't even get, they want to kick out One American News for being, for being biased, I guess, and liking the president. But the Chinese propaganda stuff, that's okay. All right, you're nuts. But I think there's a bigger reason why they do it. It's not just about, the Trump bump and getting ratings. It's a political advantage. You may have known, because you've probably watched more of my videos, if you have, that Donald Trump's approval rating is through the roof. He's doing really, really well because his press briefings are reaching the American people, and the American people like what he's saying, but it's also exposing these journalists and how they lie. In one interaction, one guy falsely quoted Donald Trump saying, you said you want them to be appreciative or otherwise you won't call them. And Trump goes, read the full quote. Trump said, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the first responders and the administration. And oh, there it is. He actually gets them to admit they're misrepresenting what's going on. Well, people can see that when they watch these press briefings. So all of a sudden we see these activists, people who are like pro-Biden for whatever reason, are like, please stop airing Trump's press briefings. Aw, poor babies. You don't like the fact that when the president gets a direct line to the people, they see you're lying? It's exactly what we have right now. I'll come back to this and we can read about and if you want, you can lick the tears off the face of these reporters who are upset that the Orange Man was mean. But we have this from Steve Guest. Admittedly, Steve Guest is GOP's rapid response director, so it's biased, I guess, to whatever extent you want to say it is biased. But he brings up a good and important point that can't be ignored. Just because he is working for the GOP doesn't mean he's wrong. CNN's Anderson Cooper claims no timeline for PPE has been provided after CNN refused to air press conferences during which military officers provided a timeline for PPE. It's worse than that, Steve. There's something you missed. In this interaction, you see Anderson Cooper talking with Chuck Schumer. Anderson Cooper says, we don't even know what the timeline is. What's the plan? Who's going to make what? We don't even understand. Anderson Cooper is spinning a narrative that supports the political movements of Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer wanted a coronavirus czar, suggested it to the president. I actually responded, in one of my segments when he did, saying, I appreciate there's effort. Chuck Schumer trying to come out and say, I think this will help, is a million times better than Pelosi and Schiff saying, but we'll investigate. No. I will give some respect to Chuck Schumer for coming out and saying, I think a centralized figure overseeing everything will be a good idea. The issue, does it really matter? So I can respect that he's at least trying to do something. It's like, hey, I can help. Well, look, man, we don't really need your help. I appreciate it, but I get it. I do think there's some good points to be made about having, he's calling it a coronavirus czar, a central figure. So again, I'll give some respect. But what the media has done here is tried to create a reason for why this should exist. And it doesn't really need to. Trump's got the task force. He's got a group of individuals who are all working on this together. It's not like they're not meeting with each other. They are. They have briefings every day. They know what everyone is doing. So perhaps. But the other issue is that Mike Pence is essentially in charge and overseeing everything. So again, while Chuck Schumer is seemingly trying to do something, there's nothing to be done. So what does CNN do? CNN makes it seem like everything's out of control. Oh, harumph. Oh no. Chuck Schumer, you're right. In reality, CNN has stopped airing Donald Trump's press events because you would have actually seen, as Steve Guest points out, there is a timeline. There are experts. There are military personnel. There is Mike Pence. All of these things are happening. So, as much as I can say, it's better that Schumer is actually trying to do something coronavirus related. I'll point out you're not adding anything. You're just mucking things up. It's not doing anything. You know what I mean? So again, look, man, I got to throw shade at Pelosi and Schiff because they're like oversight committees and investigations. That's not helping anybody. What are you doing? Well, let's get back to the press. The press, I'm ragging on media today, at least for now. Steve Guest says, here are some helpful clips for Anderson Cooper and Chuck Schumer. April 5th, Rear Admiral John Palauchik have a have a military plan to rapidly deploy thousands of ventilators where needed across the country. April 5th, Rear Admiral John Palauchik, using advanced data to geographically align flow of millions of medical supplies. Looks like a plan coming from a, ranking military person, and they're doing a pretty good job of things. Rear Admiral Palauchik, going to facilities in China to ensure quality of all equipment being sent to the U.S. On April 2nd, same guy. Using advanced analytics to expand and coordinate the supply chain and industrial base. It's almost like there's a reason the American people started approving of Donald Trump's handling of the coronavirus. It's almost like they're starting to see the media's lying. Gallup poll, Trump's approval on coronavirus, 60%. Media's approval, 44%. CBS poll, I believe it was 45% trust the president, 44% trust the media. People slightly more likely to trust the president. When you watch this, what do you see? You see a rear admiral saying, here's our plan, here's our mission, here's what we're doing. It's not Trump who's saying that. You want to rag on Trump? Do it, please. Rag on the guy. I don't care. But this is Rear Admiral John Palauchik who's telling you what his plan is, what his timeline is. And so sure enough, they stop airing this. CNN and the other outlets cut him off and accuse him of lying. It's like, is Dr. Birx, Fauci, Palauchik, and Pence all lying too? It's a task force. It's a group of people. And guess what? You know who the most trustworthy figures are in this whole thing? It's Fauci and Dr. Birx. And if you don't like them, that's fine. I don't care. Most people say they're nonpartisan. They're doctors. I'm going to trust them. Even people who like Trump are like, well, I can respect Trump is trying to get things back on track and help the country. But, Dr. Birx is a doctor. There are even people who recognize that. So what ends up happening, you get the press, they cut off the press briefings. And then when the White House Correspondents Association allows Jim Acosta to run amok, even though one of the top dudes at the White House Correspondents Association has ragged on Jim Acosta, they just let him do his thing, ranting and raving and wasting our time. They also invite Phoenix Media. So apparently, check this out over at the whiny the whiny Huffington Post article. Trump repeatedly attacks reporters. They actually bring up this interaction. So let me see if I can find it. They mention Trump talks to a woman, and here we go. At Monday's briefing, he pointedly asked reporter Yu Wang, who is Asian, if she is working for the Chinese government. Who are you working for? China? You work for China, or are you with the newspaper? Trump asked, to which the reporter noted she works for Phoenix TV in Hong Kong. Is that it? That's all they want to put in. Well, I'll tell you what. Here's Ryan Saavedra. CNN's fact checker just believes this reporter. She works for China. A large portion of the company is owned by China. And there's a link here to, I believe it's this document is a statement from Phoenix Media about, who owns it and runs it. He says the founder and CEO of the company, who owns roughly 1/3 of the company, was a colonel in the Chinese military. Phoenix Media is the only organization that's apparently allowed to broadcast in Chinese. So, I mean, this is an old article, but the fact remains, why are we allowing Chinese propaganda to air, period? I'm not here to rag on this individual reporter. I think it's stupid that Huffington Post, who's Asian? Yeah, okay, I don't care. I don't care look, Trump asked her if she worked for China, not because she's Asian, because she made a very verbose statement about all of the good things China was doing. And then Trump was like, that was a statement, not a question. Are you working for China? That's what they don't want you to see. They don't want you to see it because then the Huffington Post can frame it as though he targeted a random woman who just happens to be Asian. Eye roll, please. Well, now we can take a look over this article from the National Interest. Why is the media censoring Trump and showing Chinese propaganda? That's a really good question. It's a really good question. Apparently there's some pro-China YouTubers who are coming after me and I just don't care. You got nothing on me, dudes. I really don't care. I get so much flack from people. I made a bunch of videos ragging on China. Yeah, because China has done a lot of bad things. And apparently they're calling me a conspiracy theorist because I've talked about the Uyghur camps. Well, over here in America, we have news outlets like the New York Times, which have talked about this. So at least in this country, no, I'm sorry, that's not true. You got an issue with my commentary? I use verified third sources. So I'll go with the New York Times on this one. Even though I'm very critical of the Times and the Washington Post and many of these outlets, and I am literally criticizing these reporters, one thing you need to understand is that there are good reporters. They exist. Unfortunately, many of the people in the White House Correspondents Association are political in nature. So they're going there trying to get you. Gotcha. They were great journalists, people who actually do conflict, crisis, international reporting, who ignore all of this stuff. I am friends with many of these people. I trust them. They're very, very smart. And some of them can be opinionated, and many of them don't like the president, but they're honest about what's happening around the world. I trust them. I do. Sorry, I'm not going to trust the Chinese propaganda outlets or the pro-Chinese YouTubers. But here's what we get in the United States. The media shuts down Trump's press events where our president is literally talking to the American people. And even if he's lying, we should be able to hear what he's saying. And then the media should just fact check, whatever. Of course, they'll misrepresent and misframe what he's saying. It's what they've been doing the entire time. So let me read this for you from the National Interest. They say, the lack of regular White House press briefings used to be decried as the end of democracy. Yeah, that's right. Now it's daily White House briefings that represent the end of democracy. You see how this game is played? Trump used to do briefings all the time. Then they stopped and the media started screaming and wiggling their arms in the air and going, like turkeys running around. And now that Trump is doing these press briefings, they're like, aha, now we're going to go cover them. But the media can't falsely frame what's going on. Trump started a task force. Many credible people, high-ranking members of the military are all coming out to tell you how they're here to fight for you. So the media said, quick, shut it down. Shut it down. People like it. The American people support Trump. Oh, no, we can't have that. You know, the way I see it is, I think Trump's got character defects, and I'm putting that lightly. But if the American people like it, it's not for me to tell you whether you should or shouldn't like it. I certainly think the man is funny. I certainly think he lacks professional candor, to say the least. But I don't think I'm smarter, better, or should tell people what to do, what to think, or who to vote for. I just do my thing, you do yours, and I'll try and talk about how I feel. But the media disagrees with that. These big media companies think they should tell you what to think. They should tell you who to vote for. And we've heard it. I don't know if you've seen that clip. It was like Micah Brzezinski on MSNBC where she said something like, it's our job to tell people what to think. It's not my job to tell anybody what to think. I have an inverted view of that. I'm telling you what I think. And I frequently refer to myself as someone who just complains on the internet. I don't think my opinion is necessarily better than anybody else's. I'm just telling you what I think when I see this. So here's what we get. The media has no standard for what they do. They'll all screech and cry that Donald Trump isn't having press briefings. And then as soon as he does, they'll scream and cry that, well, but now he's lying. You called him a liar before. What changed? If you said he lied all day, every day last time, and you were mad he shut down the press briefings, and you know why they were mad? They were like, now no one can call out Trump. Well, here's your opportunity every single day. Oh, what's that? Oh, no, the people started to like it. Better shut it down. Yeah, instead we'll get Chinese propaganda. Actress Jane Lynch demanded on Twitter on Monday that President Donald Trump end his daily press briefings and the media stop covering them. Lest one think this is just one misguided voice in the dark crevasse that is celebrity Twitter punditry, there's now a petition by the left-wing activist organization Move On to get news outlets to stop covering the briefings. These people have no standards. I'm glad they're doing this. I'm happy though. You know why? Because you think this is going to bolster your case? Do you think the American people are now going to be like, they stopped airing Trump's press briefings? That makes sense. I trust the media now. No, they're going to say, where can I watch Trump's press briefings? I'm bored and want to know what's going on. I'm worried. I'm panicked. Where's my stimulus check? How do I find out? Well, there's one way to find out. Fox News, who still airs the press briefings. But these other big outlets aren't doing it. So I think there will be some people who are blinded for sure. Something I noticed, if you look to like what Alyssa Milano has been doing recently, endorsing Joe Biden and flip-flopping on the entirety of the Me Too movement has just collapsed. Look, you can argue with me about it. You can be angry about it. Alyssa Milano started the hashtag. I believe she did. She said something like, if everyone tweeted me too. Well, then she goes out and endorses Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is credibly accused, right? Alyssa Milano then stands by him and says he deserves due process, a complete reversal on where she was before. There are people who won't pay attention, who won't read the news, who will ignore all of this, and the media won't talk about Joe Biden and the accusations against him, because it's how the media operates. The good journalists, the ones who are doing on-the-ground beat reporting, who travel overseas, their stories are the sidelines. Front and center is always the political nonsense, the political agenda. Let me ask you a question. Why is it that newspapers endorse presidents at all? You got an answer for me? Because I don't know. Why should I listen to what the New York Times editorial board thinks? And all of these newspapers, they always endorse the Democrat. You should not be endorsing anybody. At the very least, I'm glad you're exposing your bias. And they might say, we're not biased. Your newspaper endorsed Hillary Clinton. What are you talking about? Of course you're biased. The people you work for, the editors, the editorial board, the people who pay, who sign your checks, they have opinions. They want you to cover certain stories. They want certain things framed certain ways. You know what that means? Here's how it works. There's a reason why. Well, for me, there's a reason why I don't work for any of these big companies. These companies don't force you to be biased, right? I've worked for, Vice. I've worked for an ABC News Univision joint venture called Fusion. They don't, sit you down and say, it's about time you start lying. Except in the case of me, I guess it does happen sometimes. But let me explain. So me personally, I was told to just side with the audience, whatever that means. And I said, no, I'm going to report what's true and factual to the best of my ability. And they didn't like that, so I kind of got, golden handcuffs, to say the least. It's a well-paid Disney job. Can't say, the pay was bad. The pay was fantastic, but I couldn't do a lot of what I wanted to do. I was still able to get out the content I wanted, but not with any of their support. And then I tried quitting. It's a long story. But here's what these companies actually do. You apply for a job at one of these media outlets. The people who run them will talk to you. They'll ask you some questions. How do you feel about the president? How do you feel about the election? Who did you vote for? Things like that. They might not necessarily ask all of these things, but they know who you are. And of course, they are biased. I'm not talking about journalists. I'm talking about the people who run these companies. And they're thinking to themselves, what's going to get the most traffic? Well, right now, the Trump bump is gold. It's lucrative, right? Okay. If you come in and you say that you like the president, they're going to be like, that's really, really great. Yeah, absolutely. Have a nice day. They're not going to hire you because you won't write the rage bait nonsense about the orange man that will get them the traffic they want or need. So there is a certain acceptance that you could make pro-Trump content and make money, or you could make anti-Trump content and make money. And their bet is that anti-Trump makes slightly more. So that's what their goal is. They don't force people to be biased. They hire biased people. These biased people then say, I am just a reporter. I am saying what I need to say. And meanwhile, upstairs, they're going like, all of this rage bait against the president is golden. Of course, they'll argue the same thing about me, but I'll tell you this. Within reason, there is an argument to be made about people like me and independent commentators over our views, and there's similarities. My content is often poking at the media and the Democrats and all that stuff with relatively, with videos that are critical of Republicans being somewhat few and far between. Well, that's just me as an individual. These are my opinions. I'm not perfect. I don't care what you want to call me. You can call me anything you want. I tend not to agree for the most part with a lot of conservative political policy positions, but I'm not a super strong, hardcore Democrat for the most part. In fact, the people I was very excited about, Andrew Yang, Tulsi Gabbard, who are, no longer running. And I don't even agree for the most part with many of their positions, but there was just slightly more that I considered. And that's what I've consistently said. And I explained all this. I think Andrew Yang's fantastic. The UBI thing, not a big fan of, but he's a very smart guy. He's got a ton of comprehensive policy positions that I thought were very smart and very rational, and I respected that. So you can call me whatever you want, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. When I make content, I'm just a dude complaining on the internet. Here's my thoughts, my feelings, my opinions. Here's a story. Here's my source. Here's why I trust it. Here's why I don't. When you look at these big media companies, they purposefully empower people and create a structure around a goal. The people upstairs have an editorial mission. They know what they want written. They know who will write it, and they build infrastructure around it with the intent of Orange Man bad so they can make money. On the internet, I believe it is fair to say that there are certain ideas that tend to do better than others. If you come out and say that, you're one of these lizard people, conspiracy people, believers, you're not going to get a big audience. If you come out and you talk about your political opinions and it aligns with a certain group of people, you will likely build an audience. But that's natural growth from personalities who have opinions. Nobody empowered me to do anything I'm doing. I just started doing it, and over time, this is where I ended up. How the media companies work is they get venture capital, they get hundreds of millions of dollars invested. They then seek out people who have these opinions and pay them to write those opinions to make money. There's a difference between someone who naturally rises on social media who holds his opinions and companies that are building them on purpose and empowering people who are not popular. I'll put it this way. These people who constantly write the rage bait, they don't have very large followings. They have very small followings. They're not particularly influential. You probably couldn't even name many of them. But they are given access to resources and a major platform to espouse these views that most people don't agree with, but it then starts poisoning people's minds, which brings me to, I'll wrap it up here. This is what a segment I did the other day, that the media smears are backfiring horrifyingly on the Democrats. And the best example is hydroxychloroquine. Donald Trump came out and said there's some promising studies. It's already been approved by the FDA for other uses, so it may work, it may not. The media went 100% smear against the president over this, even though the CDC says other countries are recommending this, that it's approved for use, and the FDA has approved emergency use. This is all fact, the cdc.gov website. But the media smears him relentlessly. They make things up because they want to get that sweet, sweet moolah. Well, then what ends up happening is Democratic politicians, believing all of this, they then say that Trump should be charged with murder or held, charged with the International Criminal Court. They then start withholding access to this life-saving medication. Now, I say life-saving in the sense that it's already for use for other things like lupus and arthritis. I don't know about, as it pertains to COVID. There are some promising results, but the only thing I can really tell you is I don't know, but it's been approved for emergency use, and there's anecdotal data, according to Governor Cuomo, that they've had positive results. It's the best I can say. I'm not going to lie and pretend it's been bad. Cuomo said it was good. I don't care if the orange man is good or bad. He said it might work, it might not. What are you supposed to say to that? It's like, you're right. It might work, it might not. There are your two choices. But the media will lie and say Trump's touting a dangerous, chemical concoction or whatever. Then Democratic politicians will read those things and get really, really angry and all flustered and then call for things that make no sense and actually cause harm to people. And the only reason the media is writing these negative stories about this stuff is because Trump said it, because their interest is not in having a genuine principled opinion. It's about orange man bad. That's why I have no problem saying Trump's foreign policy moves I have not been a fan of, and I've been very critical of over and over again. And foreign policy, for the most part, is the thing I usually have criticisms of. And it's probably related to the fact that I used to travel around the world covering a lot of, civil unrest and things like that. So I'm not going to go through the long list, but there are many things that I've criticized the president over. But when it comes to domestic policy, I'm more of a shrug, ambivalent, and not entirely sure, though I lean a little to the left. That's what you're going to get from me. From the media, you're going to get defense of Chinese propaganda if it makes the president look bad. You're going to see them invite in Chinese propaganda. You're going to see them ignore things like what Jim Acosta does, standing up and just hooting at people and not even asking any real questions. And they're doing it because they want money. Let me wrap this up. I don't want to make this one too long. The easiest way to understand everything is not just the money, but also in this segment Steve Guest posted, where you can see Anderson Cooper lying to justify Chuck Schumer's policy of appointing this czar. Anybody who's being honest would say there's a task force in place already and Mike Pence is in charge. I think things are going well and most Americans agree. By not showing you the press events, they're free to lie to their audience. And they're trying to make Chuck Schumer seem like he's doing a good job. You know what? That's the politics of it. But I think I've beaten the dead horse. I'll leave it there. Next segment will be coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all then.